Hey guys, welcome back to the doremicom channel. I told you that I would be doing this, so I'm doing it now, and that is running down just a couple of games that I have played over the years from a tabletop strategy sort of light. The first game we're going to talk about is the Dungeons & Dragons Minis game. These came with a whole ton of cards, mainly because I collected a whole bunch. This beautiful case right here is my is affectionately known as my Hotel O Minis. Just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about here, there's just a ton of miniatures in here. I mean, tons and tons. Beautiful thing about this game, the miniatures came pre-painted. For those of you guys who are not hobbyists, you could dive directly into the game. In fact, you could dive into the game with models that you purchased that day, because the miniatures will come, again, pre-painted and set up with a certain set of rules. Here's a tree ant. I don't know if we can try to get a nice photo of that. And the series of rules really were concise. Now, so another pro of the game is that the game was actually played on approximately a 2.5 by 4 foot map, gridded out, and you really didn't need the rule book. I mean, once you had the core rule books, everything else that you needed was on the stats, on the stat cards themselves. This is an example of one of the maps. It's all gridded. So another positive thing about this game is that the game effectively got played on a 2 by about 3 foot, 2.5 by 3 foot map, maybe 2 by 3. Which meant that you could have a whole bunch of concurrent games going on at the same time. At the height, it was amazing. I'd go into a game store, you'd see somewhere between 10 and 15 games going on at the same time in an amount of space that you could have maybe 3 40K games going on. All the cards basically had all kinds of stats. You had a certain amount of health for each character, movement, damage that they could cause should they hit, and then the ability to hit. It all followed a D20 rule system, which is very familiar for those of you who played Dungeons & Dragons 3.0 and later. And each character was given a certain amount of points. You build an army based on a certain point level and play it out. Cons about this game, of course, is that A, it really doesn't exist anymore and is only pretty much available for those of us who invested heavily into the game. The other real big con about this game was that it was a collectible miniatures game, which meant that it had the same negative side effect as Magic the Gathering, namely that in any particular set of models, you'd end up having maybe 1 or 2 that were just completely overpowered, but everyone would want those, and you'd end up having to go onto eBay and spending a couple, $30 to $50 to get one miniature, which is just plain stupid. The downfall of this game came quickly when they switched from 3.5 to Dungeons & Dragons 4.0, and they originally updated the miniatures game before updating the D&D rule set, and kind of pushed everyone in that direction, where every single army that you had ever had set up based on a particular alignment was scrapped, because now you had to base it on where they were from, and if they, good and evil, and you had weird division lines, which meant every card that you had already collected previously was pretty much garbage, and they didn't update every single card. They only updated a handful, which really kind of sucked. Pound for pound, dollar for dollar, though, I think this is probably one of the best games ever devised. Easy to pick up. My wife is not a tabletop gamer, but I was able to get her to play this on 1 or 2 occasions with not much hiccup. Again, the rule set was pretty streamlined and set forth in such a way that it was easy to comprehend without being too simple. There definitely was strategy involved, as the maps provided certain levels of congestion on your movement and blocking terrain and difficult terrain and all those wonderful concepts that we kind of know and love in other various tabletop strategy games. What else can I tell you about this? if you're curious about what these miniatures look like, a lot of these same exact miniatures are now in the Heroescape Dungeons & Dragons set. Identical models, the only difference is the base size. And you kind of get the sense that with the introduction of the new rule set, which really kind of ticked a lot of people off, or not so much ticked off as much as made it so that this huge investment that you've already made is pretty much worthless, that they were interested in targeting a new audience with Heroescape being available, even in Target and Walmart. It allowed for the Dungeons & Dragons miniatures game to kind of transcend its niche collection to be more accessible and more purchasable by the general audience. How successful is Heroescape Dungeons & Dragons? I'm not quite sure because I have never actually played. But with this huge collection of miniatures, I'm actually convinced that I could probably find a way to mimic the Heroescape cards, get some terrain, and play for days without being bored. So that's D&D Minis.